Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, Pro Physique Athlete. Today I'm going to be giving you a full guide on the fastest way to transform your physique. You're going to see all sorts of scams and tricks from people online trying to tell you how you can transform your physique. Today I'm going to be giving you a guide on how to actually transform your physique in the quickest time possible. And the answer here is fat loss. If you had enough time, obviously you really want to focus on muscle growth to actually change your frame. But if you only had a couple months, the fastest way to transform your physique is to actually just lose fat. It is very possible to continue building muscle, or at least maintain the muscle you have, while stripping off fat at a relatively quick rate. And losing fat is what's going to make you look better the fastest. You'll get more muscle definition, and when you get lean enough, your muscles will actually look bigger because they'll be bulging against the skin more. So these tips are going to be applicable whether you're trying to get lean for a photo shoot or a wedding, or if you're a bodybuilder just trying to learn how to bulk and cut properly. And even if your goal isn't fat loss, if you're going for lean bulking, a lot of these strategies are really going to help you because you want to keep a lid on your rate of gain. When a lot of people go into bulking, they just let loose and gain a whole bunch of weight, a lot of which is unnecessary fat. Implementing these tips will make sure that you maximize muscle gain while minimizing additional fat gain. Now, the first step I'm going to have for you is to switch completely to low calorie density foods. Low calorie density foods are those that make you feel more full while containing fewer calories. This is actually the key to fat loss and the reason why so many people fail. A lot of people will just stick to their regular diets of really tasty junk food and fast food, and then they wonder why they're hungry all the time and eventually break the diet just to eat more of that tasty food. But if you switch over completely to low calorie density foods, a lot of the time this will actually make you end up losing fat without even feeling hungry. Now, some principles for choosing these low calorie foods. First of all, you'll want to cut out unnecessary fats and sugars. So for example, fats in bakery goods. These just contain a high density of calories. Sugar is also a bad one and one that seems to be everywhere nowadays. So check the nutrition facts on things that you're buying to look at the sugar content. In terms of my leanest, most filling foods, for protein sources, roast chicken breast, lean roast beef, canned tuna are some of my favorites. Egg whites are also going to do great. For carbs, try oats, potatoes, sweet potatoes, brown pasta, and brown rice. You really want to be focusing on whole single ingredient foods and try to cut out foods that have been processed in a factory. If you just follow that simple rule, you're going to end up reducing the calorie density of your foods automatically. Now, I put it completely here in brackets because technically all we're trying to do is to get into a calorie deficit. So as long as calories out is greater than calories in, you are going to lose weight. But for a lot of people, it's actually going to be really helpful for you to switch your diet completely over. And this is because you're going to reset your taste palette. If you're used to having a lot of high calorie density foods that are really tasty, it's going to be hard for you to just introduce a couple meals here and there of say oats or egg whites. But if you switch over completely to whole minimally processed foods, you'll find that things that didn't used to taste good will start to taste good again, like fruit for example. I remember being a kid and having a lot of sugary cereals, and I was just used to having so many sweets that eating something like an apple wouldn't be tasty. But now that I really try and avoid a lot of sugary foods, fruits taste great again. Now, another key component you want to think about when choosing those lower calorie density foods is choosing foods that are relatively harder to digest or harder to process. So foods that are really chewy or have a lot of crunch and have a lot of fiber are going to be good options. This is because the process of you having to chew that textured food is going to make you feel more satisfied and more full. This is a really cool hack that a lot of people don't think about. One of my favorite examples of this is having raw baby carrots. These probably have some of the most crunch factor possible, and you really have to chew a lot just to get a few calories. So you're gonna feel a lot more full having to work to actually get that food down. Alright, the next step in our shredding plan to transform your physique is to set a regular meal schedule. This is going to be really helpful because it's going to teach your body to have regularity, and it will help you consume less calories overall. Think of the last time you missed a meal and got really hungry. By the end of that, you probably chose something that was more tasty and ended up eating way more than you otherwise would. By having a regular meal schedule, you're not getting too hungry in between meals, so you don't overeat. Also, you want to remove unplanned snacking because this will lead to you taking in a lot of unplanned calories. Now, in terms of setting your meal schedule, I would recommend that you have relatively even calories to start. I put a star with this one because this will depend a lot on the person. Some people will do better having more calories earlier in the day, and some people will do better having some more calories later. But basically, you want to even out your calories so you're not having a certain period of the day when you always get really hungry. Next, following along the same line of reasoning, you want to have your meals evenly spaced out. I recommend around 4 to 6 hours apart. This will help with hunger regulation, but will also help with hypertrophy. Now remember, we're trying to transform our physiques here, so we want to be building muscle or at least maintaining the muscle we have while stripping away fat. Now I generally recommend spreading your meals 3 to 5 hours apart over 4 to 6 meals each day. This will help you avoid getting really hungry, but will also help with hypertrophy. Remember, we're talking about physique transformation here, so muscle growth is an important factor, and we want to make sure that we're maximizing muscle growth or at least not losing muscle while we're stripping away fat. For hypertrophy, I typically recommend having protein every 3 to 5 hours or so. Now keep in mind that I just said regular meal schedule here. If you are someone who does really well with intermittent fasting for weight loss, this could be an option for you. This isn't my favorite for muscle growth, but for people really focused on fat loss, removing a part of the day when you're eating can make it easier for you to consume fewer calories. This is just because you have fewer opportunities to eat throughout the day. So if that really helps you get into that calorie deficit, do what it takes. Now the next step in our transformation guide is to resistance train. Resistance training is going to be key for our physique because we want to maximize muscle growth or at least not lose the muscle that you already have. If your goal is only fat loss, if you don't do proper training, you're going to end up losing muscle instead of fat. It's actually relatively easy for the body to tap into those muscle stores for energy. Now, in terms of choosing a plan, you can choose from any of my programs on my YouTube channel. Just make sure you choose one that's appropriate for your level and the amount of time you have. If you're really short on time, you'll still be able to maintain muscle even with just 2 gym workouts per week. For most beginners, I recommend 3 or 4 days in the gym per week. And for most other more advanced people, you'll do pretty well with 4 or 5 days in the week as a natural. People often ask, how does training change when you're aiming for fat loss? In short, it doesn't. The training that built your muscle is also going to keep your muscle. So for the most part, I'd recommend keeping the program the same. You want to focus on main heavy compound lifts. These involve multiple joints and lots of muscle mass. You want to focus on progressive overload. In the early stages of a cut, you should still be able to overload most movements, and you will see progress as long as you're not dieting too aggressively. We'll touch on the rate of weight loss that's appropriate later. But you really want to make sure that you're getting stronger in your lifts. Now, at some point, it is going to get harder and harder for you to get stronger, and you may lose some strength on main lifts like squat, bench, and deadlifts, especially if you are relatively more advanced. If you already have been dieting for a few months in a row, one smart trick here is that you can actually swap out exercises for less fatiguing variations. So for example, going from a squat to a hack squat is going to be less fatiguing. But in general, I'd recommend keeping your training volume and your training intensity the same. So intensity is how close to failure, and I recommend for most people aiming for around 1 to 2 RIR or 1 to 2 reps in reserve for most sets. So your training may get overall a little bit easier because you're switching to some of those less fatiguing exercises, but you're still getting that great stimulus from the same number of sets and still going hard. Now, once you've implemented the steps above, you're probably already going to start losing fat and seeing that transformation happening. But as you lose fat, eventually you're going to stall. So what do you do to make sure that you continue progress? If you hit a stall in weight loss, you're going to have to reduce your calories further so that you continue losing. And to do this, I recommend that you systematically reduce carbs and fats. Protein is going to be really important for us to maintain or build muscle tissue, so I'd recommend keeping that the same. So to reduce calories, I want you to cut your carbs and fats. Fats are a good one to start with because they are relatively calorie dense. Fats contain 9 calories per gram, while carbs and protein only contain 4. So I'd recommend reducing fat intake first for the most part, and then systematically reducing carbs. And the way I like to do this is to replace part of your carb or fat portion with some low calorie density foods like fruits or vegetables. This way you're still going to feel full, but you're going to be consuming fewer calories because of those low calorie density, really filling foods. As an example for myself, instead of having rice or pasta for my carb source at lunch, I might replace that with an apple and a banana, and that would reduce calories while still keeping me pretty full. I'd recommend dropping calories in 100 to 200 calorie increments. So in terms of carbs, that would be dropping 25 to 50 grams of carbs per day in an adjustment. Once you realize that you can systematically reduce your calories by dropping carbs and fats by a specific amount and then seeing a change in your scale weight, this is going to be really empowering for you. And it's going to show you that losing fat isn't really that hard after all. I remember hiring a coach for one of my first proper fat loss phases, and the biggest thing I learned at that point is to really be systematic about dropping your calories. In a lot of ways, you can see your body as a chemistry experiment. When you control the variables, you are going to be able to control the outcome. And once you figure out a system for how much you need to reduce those carbs and fats to see a specific change in your scale weight or to continue losing, you're going to be able to use that again in the future if you're ever doing another fat loss phase. Now, in terms of the outcome we want, I want you to be shooting for a target rate of loss. And I'd recommend 0.5 to 1.5% of your body weight lost per week as a benchmark for most people. This rate of loss is going to make sure that you're losing steadily and really seeing some motivating progress, but that you're not actually losing muscle. If you try and lose too quickly, it is possible for you to lose muscle. And if you try and lose too slowly, you might actually be below your scale's resolution, or it'll just get messed up by daily fluctuations in water and carb storage. If you are obese, you can lose at a faster rate of up to 2% of your body weight per week. Since fat stores are abundant in this scenario, you can afford to lose a bit quicker. It's really important here to find a rate of loss that's going to be sustainable for you. If this is your first cut, you probably want to start at a slightly slower rate. There's nothing wrong with losing a bit slower to start as long as you're able to actually see progress. Because once you know that you're able to systematically drop your calories and see a decrease in your scale weight, you know you're going to get there eventually. Okay, finally, I wanted to talk about some fun diet aids for fat loss. Some of my favorites are going to be diet soda, gum, and caffeine. Starting with diet soda, these can be helpful for you in dealing with hunger. These can help in 3 different ways. First of all, drinking that liquid will fill up your stomach and help you to feel mechanically full. Next, the carbonation from the soda will actually distend your stomach even more, which can also help with satiety. And finally, you'll get that sweetness without having any calories. Next, 0-calorie chewing gum can also help you fight hunger. Here, the act of chewing something can trick your body into feeling like you're eating, and that can help with satiety. And again, the sweetness can also satisfy some of those sweet cravings. In terms of how to use diet soda and gum, I'd recommend using these in between your meals when you're feeling hungry, or at the end of your meal if you're still hungry after you finish your meal portion. Sometimes all you need is a bit of a distraction to not feel hungry. Now, caffeine cycling is an underrated hack. Most of you are probably chronic caffeine addicts. You need 1 or 2 cups of coffee just to get going in the morning. But the trick to using caffeine for bodybuilding is actually cycling it. So when you're bulking and you have lots of calories around, I actually go completely off caffeine for the most part, maybe just using it a couple times a week. Then during a fat loss phase, I bring in caffeine and increase the dose systematically so that I continue feeling the effect. Problem with caffeine is that you become tolerant to it. So the same amount of dose won't give you the same effect after a while. But if you go for a while off of it, you will get resensitized to it. And then during your fat loss phase, you can ramp up the dose as needed. This is going to be helpful for you in terms of just getting through your day. A lot of people will find that their energy drops off and their workout performance may suffer during a fat loss phase. So I actually found this to be a game changer, especially when I was in the hospital making important calls on cancer patients or people dying in the ICU. Depending on how sensitive to caffeine you are, you might start with 50 to 100 milligrams and then increase by 50 to 100 milligram increments every several weeks when you stop feeling the effect. Remember, the key here is that this is a temporizing measure that you're just bringing in for your fat loss phase. It will suck when you go cold turkey after your fat loss phase, but I find that you feel so much better when you bring in calories at the end of the diet anyways, so it actually isn't that big of a deal. So those are some higher level tips for you to help you to shed fat and transform your physique. But what if you really want the secret sauce? Check out my course, Dream Physique Nutrition, where I give you the ultimate guide on transforming your physique. Course covers both bulking and cutting, so it's the last resource you'll ever need on nutrition. Check out the link in the description below where there's a free webinar where I share 4 critical steps for a successful diet. If you want to learn more about fat loss, check out this video where I interview Dr. Eric Helms, who is a world leader in science-based bodybuilding. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to transform your physique and your life, and we'll see you next time.